Alright everyone, the suggestion is now being made that North Korea may have considerably more nuclear material than it was previously estimated to have. That is, the estimation of them having 10 or less atomic weapons was based on what was then known about the amount of potentially fissionable material they had access to, how much they could actually obtain and then refine to make weapons. It looks like they have significantly more than that. Now, they don't have multi-stage, fully modern hydrogen bombs. That's the sort of thing only the US and Russia have. They don't have boosted fission weapons, which is essentially you've got the atomic weapon, you've injected tritium around it to create secondary effects like most of the major nuclear powers have. They only have primitive atomic weapons. They do, though, have a lot of progress that they've made over the last half-decade. In a very short span of time, they have twice increased their missile capabilities. They do now have multi-stage missiles that are technically capable. Assuming that they can get them to routinely work, they're technically capable of hitting the western coast of the United States. Although it's not clear they have the funding necessary to create very many of these weapons. Most of their atomic load in any scenario would be like that of Pakistan or India. That is, has to be dropped by plane. The fact, though, that such a small, insular, backwards state that has such antiquated military technology in so many different other fields has obtained this level of atomic development does suggest that the new report is true. And here's another thing to keep in mind. If the Trump administration says something in regards to foreign affairs that's basically the same as what corrupt Obama or corrupt Bush has said, I'm just going to assume that it's bullshit. The same as I would assume that it's bullshit before. Like domestic surveillance is another example. Trump administration has continued it. I'm dismayed at that fact, by the way. I'm not a fan of any domestic surveillance, especially domestic mass surveillance. Doesn't really work, expensive, violates the Fourth Amendment on a daily basis. And so he's continued that same, it originates with people we know to be corrupt. We know that fucking W is corrupt. We know that Obama is corrupt. He's continuing that program. It's still corrupt, despite Trump being the president. You have to be a little bit screwy to think that it magically, the situation gets better just because the person in the head position of the executive branch has changed party or is a different person. It's not the way the world works. But when I see Trump and those around him taking up a totally different tack on North Korea than in the past, I say, because it's so different, because we've never actually taken up this basic line of reasoning before, I have no reason to specifically doubt all of these various reports. It is different. It's not this. Obama basically said, well, we'll slap him with another round of sanctions, and we'll sit back, and North Korea will begin to collapse, and of course it never did. Bush drew some lines in the sand, said, oh, don't you test another atomic weapon, and of course, they did. And we didn't fucking do anything about it. The Chinese stymied any diplomatic approach that would have been taken. And so long as they do that, there's nothing other than a military response that we can really do. The best hope in the situation is to try to intimidate them into firing the first shot to justify liberating the people of North Korea. China will quickly get involved. Don't think that they're going to lash out at the United States and start nuking us because we attacked North Korea with an army of South Koreans that want to march in and restore order and reunite the peninsula. It's not going to happen. People keep talking about EMP and all this bullshit. And it's literally bullshit. It's not going to happen. The North Koreans are not going to fry our electronics with a primitive atomic weapon. You can't even do that. They would need at least a boosted fission weapon in orbit to cause any larger scale damage. Even then, a lot of the electronics nowadays are built so they can withstand that kind of EMP. You're talking you'd need a fairly significant hydrogen bomb, something only the US or Russia actually fully fields in order to accomplish such a task. There are only 2 nations in the world today capable of knocking out even a fairly decently sized state, maybe something the size of France or Germany, with EMP, let alone a country the size of the United States. I'm tired of hearing about the EMP bullshit. I hear this from people in the alt media. I hear it constantly echo. Business Insiders are on like 5 fucking stories about this. It's not going to happen. As far as North Korea, though, having potentially more material available to make smaller atomic weapons, and possibly in the future working towards boosting things, manufacturing tritium. Yeah, it's already there and possible for them to expand further. They have been. They've gone from their first test of an atomic weapon so many years ago, it was a failure. That is, the primary explosive detonated, the atomic weapon itself did not actually undergo fission, there was no atomic explosion. They then had a series of tests of weapons that were relatively small. We're talking sub-Hiroshima level explosions. Their last test was larger. Not hydrogen bomb larger, not boosted fission larger. You can look at the magnitude of the earthquake generated, compare it to the past magnitudes, and you know what you're dealing with. But it was certainly a better atomic weapon than they at first designed. It was larger. Its blast was somewhat higher. They could, in time, develop the ability to put these on actual missiles, which makes them 1,000 times more dangerous than simply loading them into a plane, into an old, we're talking a 50s era bomber that they're going to be using, and trying to drop it on Tokyo or Beijing or Seoul or something like that. That's not going to happen either. Anti-air systems fielded by even the most minor powers of the world would blow them right out of the air instantly. Half of their planes aren't even usable. The risk in North Korea is waiting so long that they break out of that sort of capability of these other countries around them to defend. Like having a couple of Patriot missile batteries or a THAAD system or something in South Korea or Japan is not going to be much help if they start swarming them with missiles. It's not going to help. There's also an additional problem, and that's the basic concept. If, for instance, put yourself in Kim Jong-un's shoes. Let's say war begins, and your enemies around you that you really want to nuke, they have significant amounts of anti-missile, anti-air systems. What would you do? You would unleash unholy hell with a bunch of decoy missiles that basically some of them don't even have warheads in them. Some of them are standard explosives, some of them would have basic chemical weapons, and then you have your nukes mixed in with the rest. They're indistinguishable from one another. You launch a couple hundred of those into Japan. How are they going to know which ones are the nukes? And that's the real problem. If they do gain the ability to put them on missiles, they just developed a multi-stage intercontinental ballistic missile. We're talking missile technology that's fairly sophisticated that's in North Korea now. Now, it's a prototype. It didn't fully function, but it was multi-stage. It did. They have that capability now. They're only going to refine it. The problem is that so much of the world wants to sit on the sidelines as North Korea builds up its abilities over and over. Let me ask you this. Let's say that Kim Jong-un's regime does destabilize like Obama suggested it would, and it didn't. Let's say that happens and they have a bunch of nuclear material and atomic weapons and missiles technically capable of carrying them. Let's say that his regime destabilizes and one that's even worse comes along, an imperialistic regime that wants to bomb South Korea. Or a regime led by somebody from the proletarian class who somehow gets into power, actually wasn't educated in Europe like Kim Jong-un was, hasn't coordinated with the generals, is so brainwashed they actually believe the outside world is technologically backwards, and proceeds to press the little red button, thinking, well, it's not going to make any difference. They're not going to be able to fight back because we've got all these super weapons and everyone else is like that they're living in the medieval era. Someone who's never left North Korea doesn't understand that the world is a little bit different from how the DPRK makes its people perceive it. Now, not everybody in North Korea is brainwashed. We've got footage from in North Korea. We've also got tales from defectors saying, yeah, a lot of the population is aware the outside world is fundamentally better. They're pressing for like an interior market economy, and they're sharing like foreign movies and stuff, and there's a little bit more low-scale rebellion, generally speaking. Like, people don't follow the letter of the law to the word all the time. What if one of the people that's not part of that gets into power somehow? Like, let's say Kim Jong-un keels over, and some peasant in association with some clueless lower-level military commander somehow takes control of Pyongyang, declares himself dictator. Oh yeah, I was born on a unicorn too, or something like that. What happens to the region? They probably get nuked. I think that's the big concern there. We shouldn't be dicking around in the Middle East. Iran be damned. I don't care if they do get nuclear weapons. They're 10 times more sane than North Korea. Hell, their Liberal Party has taken over there in Iran. There's like anti-religious propaganda rooted in Iran now circulating on fucking Facebook. They're beginning to open up to the world. One thing that Obama kind of sort of got right. I didn't care whether the Iran deal went through because I don't really care if they have nuclear materials. North Korea is a little bit different. When's the last time that Iran, in an official capacity, came out and delivered a statement saying, we will nuke all of our neighbors, we're going to nuke Israel, we're going to nuke Poland, we're going to nuke the Turks, we're going to nuke the Pakistanis, we're going to nuke Mecca off the face of the earth. When's the last time that they did that? They haven't done it. They don't make that, they just call you the great Satan and then they quiet down. They go out there and they carry their guns and they put on a show of force and say everyone else is the devil and we're the great Persian people. And they're not going to do anything. They don't even have like a prototype atomic weapon. North Korea comes out on a regular basis. There are people in the US think Iran's the main enemy. North Korea has atomic weapons, now has multi-stage missiles, even if they're just prototypes. They will improve their design. They will eventually get that working. They have, routinely, it's like a matter of habitual principle to them to threaten all of their neighbors. They even threaten the Chinese now. How is that more stable than Iran? I'd think that Iran would be something, okay, yeah, maybe there'll be a problem there in the future, but right now they haven't really done anything. Hell, they're beating up on ISIS in parts of the Middle East. More power to them. North Korea sits there, alienates its only ally in the world, and people want to still call them a sane actor. We have, what was it, I think it was a CNN story. They had an op-ed where they're like, what if North Korea is right? What if we're the aggressors, we're evil people, the North Koreans, self-determination? They don't have self-determination. They have one strong man with a military iron ring around him, and that's what calls the shots in North Korea, not the people. There's no semblance of sanity in their system. That's nonsense. People suggesting that don't appear to understand the difference between a country in which people fundamentally have the ability to some degree to express themselves and a country like North Korea where if you openly express yourself, you probably get shot. Unless you're expressing yourself by saying, God damn, I love Kim Jong-un, he's just such a great guy. Oh, all these generals, just wonderful people's martyrs and saviors and stuff like that. Death to the West, death to the US and China and all these other dogs that are around us, trying to destroy us, throttle us in the night. They want to rape and pillage and burn. And so we must destroy them. Praise Kim Jong-un. Yeah, that's what you can say in public in North Korea. That or, hey, how much for the radishes? Oh, shit, I don't have any money. Well, I guess this plan of mine fell through. Something like that. That's how North Korea works. They're trying to exonerate the North Koreans. Oh, everything's fine. They're not the aggressors in this situation. Evil United States imperialist bullies are harassing them. Well, yeah, no shit. They've threatened to launch nuclear weapons at several of our allies. They've also threatened to annihilate us. Now, they don't have the ability to do that, and they never will. I believe war will begin long before that happens. It's just a matter of how long are we going to wait on this issue while the problem gets worse and worse, so that more and more people inevitably die in the exchange that will inevitably come. It will happen. Embargoes and sanctions don't work on a state like North Korea. Doesn't fucking matter. The people there are so used to being half-starved, they're not going to rise up and overthrow Kim Jong-un and risk getting mowed down simply because there's a minor famine. It's not going to happen. So, North Korea probably has more atomic material than thought, which means that they have more potential weapons than thought, which means maybe somewhere they have a cache, maybe they have 50, maybe they have 100 atomic weapons. Are we 100% sure we even necessarily know at this point? If we find out, oh yeah, they're manufacturing a lot more plutonium than we thought originally, well, that's just peachy, that's just great. That's wonderful. Meanwhile, everyone's fixated on worrying about Iran. Or they're worried about Iran and Russia. Russia, which already has these weapons, then meanwhile they turn a blind eye to North Korea that wants that kind of weapon. It'd take them 100 years to build a hydrogen bomb, but boosted fission's not outside of their technological literacy. That's 10 times more dangerous than the kind of weapons that they're currently using, and they're potentially going to gain delivery systems from them. This isn't the UK or France or Russia, a sane, reasonable, logical nation that's capable of conducting diplomacy. We're talking about a nation that is fundamentally living, for many intents and purposes, within the 1950s or 60s or thereabout. That's about all. Peace out.